Is everybody in this room kind of questionable, like questioning what's been going on for the last 2 years at least, right of center? Yes. Is there anybody who's like still like total red vest buy-in, like best thing ever? Just need to know, like, don't want to like catch anybody sideways. So I speak truth if you guys haven't heard me speak before, because I do education policy. I also do child protection, which would be CPS, child sex trafficking. It all comes together in education. Dr. Fury was earlier talking about social workers. They will now be considered mental health professionals because not like these people care enough to listen on legislation, so it's pretty much an assumption. They've had access to your children. So you need to make sure your school board, like we have opt-outs all day. The #1 Virginia law that you must be notified at least annually in writing your right to opt out of your child having counselors, psychologists, and now that's going to be social workers giving counseling to your children without you knowing it. Because they're doing it all day, every day. They're asking you, do you have a supportive parent at home? Oh, you don't? Okay, I'll be your supportive parent. And all the stuff that goes into these little machines right here, and like Dr. Fury said, this data that they're collecting on children is 75 years post-graduation. And we're gonna show you what their mental health, there's competencies, that's what they're calling it. But unhappiness is one that is a coded DSMB under the new Medicaid in Virginia. Unhappiness. It's funny until you think about your kid graduating 9 or 10 mental illnesses, what that's going to do to their future. So, welcome to your children's future. I've got a Handmaid's Tale up because I have a master's in geopolitical war history, so it marks whoever is give me the children, as soon as they can come away from the mother meeting their breast, give them, that would be Lenin. And is because they're coming after our children. Not only, I literally mean the law reviews that I read about parental licensing from Columbia and Harvard. Well, if foster parents have to do it, why don't you have to do it for birthing children? And they've been talking about it as like a fringy thing, conspiracy theorists. Homeschooling, parents who homeschool are the abusers for indoctrinating their children into their worldview. I'm not kidding. Parental rights means we're saying we own our children, and parental absolutism. This stuff comes from somewhere, and just like teachers got infiltrated, the lawyers have too. And so you always, it's a very frightening place to be in my head, most days, all day. And then the Hunger Games. Because if y'all aren't aware, in these little nifty computers too, with all of this data they're collecting, when you hear the word personalized learning for tomorrow's workforce, they mean it. By 12, your child has already been predetermined using their skills and competencies, and they've already had their lot in life predetermined for them, and they're all getting personalized learning for what the Virginia workforce is going to need them to be. And so I get this a lot of times is not all children are meant to go to college. I completely agree, but that does not mean that we give away free will. I lived this with my 6th grader 2 years ago, literally telling my 6th grader it was pointless to go to college. I have a master's, a bachelor's, and I'm getting ready to go to law school, but academia was wonderful for this brain. I would not be here doing what I was if I had just been told, you're gonna be a widget maker, but you're never gonna know that you didn't wanna be a widget maker because you and your friend sitting next to each other got completely different educations because we determined from Chuck Robb, Belial's, going all the way up till now. But all of a sudden, the language sounds a little bit better with a red vest. No, but if you were paying attention to the Northam administration, we were actually the best place for businesses to come in 2019. That would be the Northam administration. Amazon came then. The language has always been the same. You can look on YouTube, Parent Team 6. I broke from literally in 1982, Chuck Robb started talking about our children recovering the economy and making us, the dominant world leader again. That is not a child's job. What is the purpose of education? It is not to get a job. I know a lot of people are going, that's an outcome. That is not the purpose for it. The purpose of education is to have a foundation of knowledge, like arithmetic, instead of fuzzy new math. Learning how to read phonics versus sight words, like Chinese. How are you ever going to love calculus? I'm a total math nerd. Love calculus and algebra. My daughter came home last year after we pulled her out of public school, and she had a book, and it was pre-algebra, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. She was like, oh my God. And I was like, you're going to be a total math dork too. And she totally is. It's that you have to start, like when they're talking about, we're going to teach your child to think critically. That would have been okay sounding, 30 years ago when it actually meant to think critically. Kindergartners, critical thinking, cause and effect. Anybody know the age of reason? 7. Children cannot begin to connect dots between cause and effect. Have you ever tried to argue with a 4-year-old? You might as well they don't get it. Why don't they get it? The whole prefrontal cortex thing, it's a total burden to anybody in the education realm. They're like, yeah, we don't care about that. They have no reasoning ability to what age? Oh, okay, that's fine. We're still going to do what we're doing. Okay, the dumbest way possible? Yeah, let's keep doing it that way. But they're destroying our children, and it's the removal of free will. Your son is, because of his competencies, he's going to be a widget maker. And little Debbie over here she's going to be a t-shirt stamper, presser. And so but then how many jobs, who's here in their life has had more than five jobs? Who got the one out of the ballpark first time? Never done anything else. Awesome. I have done so much with my life, including that whole burdensome master's in geopolitical war history of the 21st century. Wait till we get there. But with journalism, and then now I'm going to be an attorney with constitutional law. But deterring children, no, go to a 2-year community school, because it's all this private sector partnership they're doing. You have to start questioning if it means questioning a political party versus the tiniest little humans in the world who are getting screwed over left and right because we are too lazy to get up, then I don't have anything else to say. And that's really where I've been for I gave people grace for a year and a half, and now I'm just really okay, look at your kid and say, okay, widget. Is that the disbelief is that if you are an auto mechanic and I take my car, I don't tell you or ask you, how are you changing oil over there? Do what I do, spend all day long working with people across the nation, across the world, picking apart education policy and where it's all come from to tie it all together. And then you can come question me about why school choice is not a good thing. But don't say, oh, you're anti-school choice, you must be anti-pro-parent. Okay, let's have an intelligent conversation about that. No, it's just school choice is great. Okay, well, can you explain yourself? It's almost like having, with a, Gen Z, whatever, liberal that's 18 years old, but they have conservative values, but they've bought onto a belief that they know nothing about. So with that, Parent Team 6, a lot of y'all know me, Virginian for Children's First. Bobby's still here. I have decided that since we are fighting a war, if you remember the last presentation, but we have no war plan. I come from a family of soldiers and Marines, and I'm a grunt wife, and so I think of everything in war terms. And hoorah, that's right, 2-9, hell and helmet. But, I'm like, okay, so World War II had 4 theaters of war. They had generals, they had different branches of the military. They all had the same goal, right? Which is what we all have. But what are we doing? Fighting separately. Same war, except I know who your enemy is. You think might know enemy in mine, but we're not working together. And so that's what Parent Team 6 is. Anything that has to do with the destruction of children in the family. So that does bring guns in. I'm going to get into that, like Dr. Fury said earlier. It's pretty much any conservative values. God. I'm going to start saying the word God a lot. Because my favorite, I like coming up with new arguments that shuts people down and makes them go cry in a corner really quickly. And the biggest one is your human rights that you value so and want to shove in my face. If you kill my God, because where do our natural rights come from? They're endowed by our what? So here, in the greatest, freest nation known as the United States of America, you can go find an island and found it on your founding fathers being John Money, Alfred Kinsey, whoever you want. But here, this is how we do things. And if you kill my God, you have no natural rights. Which one is it? You don't get it both ways. And they look at you and they go, which one is it? Kill my God, you're no longer free to give porn to my children, rape them and have it be called consensual sex with a 12-year-old. Which one is it? You can't kill my God, and you just can't have both of them. Is that we have been desensitized and been told to be politically correct. That was part of the plan too. As long as you have love in your heart and truth in your mouth, speak truth, not your truth, truth. Because once you become fearless, it is an amazing feeling. People look at me all the time, God, people must not like you. I don't care. I look at my children every single night, and they will always know what their mother did for them and my grandchildren. I don't want my children to fight this fight, because I don't think we'll be here for them to fight this fight. So it's not hard to find me. I'm not very private. But there's my cell, parentteam6@gmail. We have pt6.org. Being anybody up out there that's like a coder and wants to help me get an amazing website, let me know. But I'm up here all the time, but I tell communities all the time, call me, I'll come to you. I don't charge. We can sit down with a table and talk about the questions that you have that you don't understand. Set up a Zoom meeting, we'll call. I was like, that's what I do. I just want to save the world, I don't care. So the American's Creed, I do not choose to be a common man. It is right to be uncommon. I seek opportunity to develop whatever talents God gave me, not security. I do not wish to be a kept citizen, humbled and dulled by having the state look after me. I want to take the calculated risk, to dream and to build, to fail and to succeed. I refuse to barter incentive for a dole. I prefer the challenges of life of the guaranteed existence, the thrill of fulfillment to the stale calm of utopia. I will not trade freedom for, I can't read that. Nor my dignity for a handout. God, I'm blind. I'm 44 in 2 days. What happened? I will never cower before an earthly master nor bend to any threat. It is my heritage to stand erect, proud, and unafraid, to think and act myself, enjoy the benefit of my creations, and to face the world boldly and say, this with God's help I have done. All this is what it means to be an American. This, who knows where that is? Normandy. One grandfather here, one at Iwo Jima, went on to Korea. We got volume? This kid, you might want to. This is my husband. Helmand Province. He did 4 pumps in Afghanistan. Lost 4 buddies who never bought alcohol legally.
A company always on the run. I was born, a shotgun in my hands, behind the gun.
Only Marines record during a firefight, by the way. What would happen today if we had war? Have you thought about that? How frightening it would be?
Come on, baby! Come on! Now these times.
Imagine going to war in the General Assembly, or having to go talk to somebody and putting out the bat signal and having air support come in for you. That's what I think about every day, because I'm alone almost every day doing this. But I was born for this. Like, you know, I'm glad I didn't see those movies while my husband was deployed. Lord have mercy. But my husband came home and he said, "I fought my war, it's your turn." But is I showed that for a number of reasons is, you know, the military aspect is if something went sideways. We don't have a military. We have a bunch of snowflakes. Do you think that there would be men doing that, giving their lives at 19? Go up to Arlington where they're I mean, what they're doing to Arlington is disgusting. Nobody should be allowed to touch that ever. And every July, taking shots of Captain Morgan's for somebody who, Mikey Swank and Sachs, who had his legs blown off and his mom had to go to Germany where he died, is that this was not that long ago that people were giving their lives for this nation. That's what the history of my life is that I think about what my grandfathers would say if they saw us now. And again, I don't care. At the end of the day, you don't like me, I don't care. I speak truth. You don't like truth, I don't care about that either. You want to love and speak truth and be free, AF, let's hang out. But other than that, you want to pander to people destroying children? No. I don't care who you are, how much money you have, or what your importance is. Don't care. But what Dr. Fury said about the transgender policy.
It's a very different approach in what the constitutionally historical approach has been between state government and local government. Okay, Glenn, there is no other way other than the constitutionally protected way that a state and a school board govern. That's like saying, oh, that's the Constitution. But that's exactly what he did right here.
on the new policy where it says schools shall keep parents informed about their children's well-being. It reads logically, United States Supreme Court that characterized parental rights, Troxel v. Granville. But then he adds in Virginia Code, except in circumstances where children prohibit contact where a student is at imminent risk of suicide related to parental abuse and neglect. No, sir. No Virginia code, no Virginia law can override United States Supreme Court constitutionally founded fundamental God-given natural rights, which is a parent's rights. Glenn, I will see you at the Supreme Court too.
And that's what the new policy does, is it takes the constitutionally protected right, which is common law, given to us by not only the Constitution, but our natural rights, but it has been codified. We have now long since stated that parental rights are constitutionally protected. And then people say, well, the governor, he's making a video saying school boards must adopt this. It must be okay. No. Now your parental rights have a rider at the end that if your child says they're suicidal or you're going to beat them, which is what they're doing anyway. No, that's not how this works in America. And then, okay, for straight children opt out, okay. All right, what's that gonna look like? Straight children line up in the bathroom, line up in the hallway. I mean, then you look and you're like, why isn't anybody else telling us this? Why did our school board adopt that? Because probably Sam Sanders and the VSBA told them to. But this was,
By the way, can never override the constitutionally protected and legally enforceable rights of parents. Governor, Ms. Lisa Coons, please relay to the Board of Education, Superintendent Coons, and our governor, a policy created by a non-elected body passed by the General Assembly of Virginia is not the law of the land. That is the Constitution of the freest nation in the world, the United States of America. In response to the current unconstitutional dignity policy, I will remind you, Parham v. J.R. 1979, the statist notion that governmental power should supersede parental authority in all cases because some parents may abuse or neglect children is repugnant to American tradition. Quilon v. Walcott, the year before, 1978, we have recognized on numerous occasions that the relationship between parent and child is constitutionally protected. Troxel v. Granville, 2000, parental rights are a fundamental right. Palco v. Connecticut, what is a fundamental right? A right that is so implicit in the order of liberty that neither liberty nor justice would exist if they were sacrificed.
I get really going when I start talking about the Constitution, about Supreme Court cases, because it's all there, and there is no ifs, ands, or buts. And that's what is so frustrating, is that if we go to the land the way it's supposed to go, like America's supposed to run, because the American experiment is failing miserably. It's a constitutional republic. What, if you can keep it? We're not keeping it. So
My name's Ann Taydus, and I'm an
I was
education
spent,
policy and child protection specialist.
in the Senate last week, Schulenberg, Val
Those that are in
Vengenberg,
opposition,
I did read them a book.
Speak.
It was a bedtime story.
Again, Ann Taydus. And to follow up with his point is that the books that we're talking about, nobody's talking about Maya Angelou. We're not talking about To Kill a Mockingbird. This book here, let's talk about it. And if there's any minors in the room or watching online, I ask you to leave. And please don't try to Tim Anderson me, because I'm going to read this book to you. Is that we're talking about books that talk about fingering buttholes, anal butt plugs. This is Chesterfield County, with images, if you can see that, okay? It talks about, if you're not into sex, go online and you can find access to kink if you're into hanging people from ceilings. This is what we're talking about, okay? And to her point is that you've always been able to challenge books and have them removed. It's actually 2 or 3 different Virginia codes. That's not new. If school divisions are inappropriately citing.
So I've now read it at Chesterfield County School Board, at the Board of Education, and now at the Senate. Chesterfield County, we have 69 schools. I've read it there. I've gone to the Board of Education. I've read that book. And now I've run it in front of the Senate. So I'm on public record everywhere. That's where they're allowing our children to have. It's a disgusting, disgusting book that you could not imagine. It's actually back there. I think Bobby has it. But first they came for the elderly and you didn't speak up. And then they came for your businesses and you gave them up willingly. Now they're coming for the children. Stand in the way. Show them faith over fear. Wake up, parents. You're almost out of time. I don't know how much time I have left. But I wanted to go through some terms real quick that maybe will help clarify a lot of the madness going on, because it is madness and it is madness by design. Postmodernism is what we're living in now. And it is a rejection of all truth, and it is literally chaos for chaos. Is that it doesn't make sense because it doesn't make sense. It's a rejection of the sovereign, autonomous individual with an emphasis upon collective and anonymous experience. Absolute truth does not exist. Nothing is ever proven, either by science, history, or any other discipline. Reality is a social construct, relativism, moral relativism. There is no moral real that's relative, it's the opposite. Celebrates ideas of fragmentation, incoherence, chaos, and disorder. Abandons the search for origins, stable meaning, universal truth in the direction of history. Other terms is moral relativity. Secular humanism is one. And so moral relativism is a really big one. So that's why these kids are acting the way they are, is what they're being taught in school. There are no ethics anymore in any profession, but there is no moral realism. Like if we took the opposite of relativism. Even in the history standards that everybody thought were whitewashed last year, is that there's no good and evil anymore. Not even Hitler. Is that they're asking what's their experience with history. There is no factual, this is what happened. There's descriptive moral relativism, holds only that some people do in fact disagree about what is moral. Meta-ethical moral relativism, nobody is objectively right or wrong. I would probably say that's where we are. Normative moral relativism holds that because nobody is right or wrong, we ought to tolerate the behavior of others even when we disagree about the morality of it. And then humanism, because there's the democratic secular humanists. If you look at the people driving all this sex stuff, you've got the Washington Democrat human secularists, and this is in a list with the atheists. So humanists are putting humans and other living things at the center of your moral outlook, seeing the world as a natural place and looking to science and reason. How crazy. Promoting and supporting human flourishing across all frontiers and championing human rights for everyone. Secular humanism, humans are viewed as inherently perfectible. Religion and the environment in which one lives, especially society, and the roles cast on him are viewed as preventing people from fulfilling their potential. Secular humanism is therefore very antagonistic towards religion. The worldview of secular humanism is religion, the belief in God, belief in the spiritual, is viewed to be harmful, suppressing individual freedom, and is therefore aggressively opposed. So do you see 8 different divisions, counties or whatever, that have a division of secular humanists? All forms of sexual expression between consenting adults, now their definition of that is very different, are acceptable. Abortion for any cause and euthanasia are acceptable. What did Dr. Fury just say? These people have no value for human life at all. I have a friend who was crashing. She had a heart problem, had a transplant when she was 16, and she was 40 weeks pregnant. They were able to gas her, and there was, a PA or somebody, and they called the ER doc, and the ER doc said, they're both going to die. You know what to do. They gassed her. They had the baby out in less than a minute and a half. Why would you need to abort that baby? Is what we need to do. With that amount of fire, say to people. I had to give birth to my son at 22 weeks sleeping. And I tell people I had to get a special doctor because of what a D&E is. A dilation and an evacuation. So I chose to give birth to my son, the hardest thing I've ever done. Because I would not let them do that to his tiny little body. These people need to be told what they're doing. Because abortion, euthanasia, it's just starting, and it's going on right now in Richmond. Self-realization is the highest goal of each human. Nihilism, it comes from Nietzsche, it's very similar. Is our lives are meaningless, no meaning, no belief, no hope. These children are not mentally ill, okay? When you have no higher power, when there is nothing other than the here and now. I've been clean 16 years, almost 16 years. I've been in one of those places in that time period before. It's a very dark and lonely place. Demoralization and depression have almost identical symptoms, is that we're not asking the right questions. Nihilism is very real. It's just like postmodernism and human secularism. Believes in nothing, has no loyalties, no purpose, and therefore associated with extreme pessimism. I think we're seeing that with the children today. Ultimately, existence and life is meaningless. Nothing is real, and therefore nothing is worth doing, which is fatalism. The point is, there is no point. And I don't know if you guys have Yuri Bezmenov. But this man, it's like, when I first started talking about all this 2.5 years ago, I was like, wow. Like, oh, 84, wow. But then it's like 2.5 years later, I listen and I understand every word coming out of his mouth. And I'm like, and we were at the end of it then, and 85 was 4 years old. But what he talks about the 4 stages of demoralization, is that being at the tail end of it, is he's always talking to the people that have infiltrated, but doesn't ever give you that like tangible. Well, what he left out is who he was talking about in that video are the cultural Marxists from the Frankfurt School in Germany. It was founded in 1923. Most of them were Jewish, so when Hitler came into power, it was really not a smart place to be. So first they went to Switzerland, and then they landed in New York. They couldn't convince America. It was really different over here than over in Europe. After with Stalin, after Lenin, the Bolsheviks, Gromsky, Lukács. It was really different over here, being free and everything. So they decided. So we've all heard that they infiltrated. But this is who we're talking about. It's the Frankfurt School. Herbert Marcuse was one. That may be a name to some people that know. But then they reestablished at Columbia University. And so they started infiltrating higher education, especially teacher schools. And the main aims of the Frankfurt School in creation in 1923, the creation of racism offenses, continual change to create confusion, the teaching of sex and homosexuality to children, the undermining of schools and teachers' authority, huge immigration to destroy identity, the promotion of excessive drinking, emptying of churches, an unreliable legal system with bias against victims of crime, dependency on the state or state benefits, control and dumbing down of media, encouraging the breakdown of the family, abolish differences in the education of boys and girls, declare women to be an oppressed class and men as oppressors. So that's a video from War Room. Later on, I'll have the whole slideshow on pt6.org. So when Karl Marx tells you the education of all children from the moment they can get along without a mother's care shall be in the state institutions at state expense. Democracy is the road to socialization. Did anybody get a warm and fuzzy feeling when you heard Governor Youngkin talk about birth thrive to 5? Okay, because 3 weeks before that, Tim Kaine was in the federal government doing the same exact thing. People are desperate. Like, I get it. Like, I was a single mother. Childcare is expensive. Preschool is expensive. But you don't give them over to the government. Like, they've literally been telling you for years. Like, Arne Duncan, Clinton's Secretary of Education, was talking about like having after school. It would be great if we could just have them morning till night. And then, if some schools want to have sleep, bunk overs or whatever, we can do that too. Is that when Tim Kaine bad, okay? Anybody that now is like, oh, well, I guess I have to say Tim Kaine's good if him and the governor both thrive to 5. So that I guess that means welfare is great too. And no, welfare state bad. Like, you can't compromise your values because all of a sudden it doesn't fit the party that you're in. Okay? I worked my butt off to get that man elected. So it was very personal when I was not given what I was promised to protect my children in school. So I'm not a liberal, I promise you that. But when you promise me something and my 4-year-old something who's traveled the state and the 7 rural districts, I told you, if you do what I heard you were going to do, you don't want to know me. And I wasn't kidding, is that I'm not picking on him. He's an elected official who's not doing his job. We have to hold them accountable. People all the time go, oh my God, are you speaking against the governor? Are you speaking against your senator? Yes, we the people. What do people not get about that? They work for us. Your school board works for you. The superintendent works for your school board. That means your superintendent works for you. That is the way it works in a constitutional republic with a Democratic elected form of government. And it is that easy. They're like, well, it's just not, the VSBA said it's just not, I don't care. If you want to then go how to file, okay, so the founding fathers had to have built something in to protect us when our rights are taken from us, right? They did. We just have to exercise it. Civil rights, 1983, deprivation of rights. Civil rights, 1985, conspiracy against rights, color of law. It's all there. But one voice, one angry mother that they've heard her so many times. We can just shove her under until they can't anymore. But the heroes of this story will not be the people born rebels. Like, I've been a high defiant nonconformist my whole life. I just finally found purpose for it. The heroes will be those who overcome their fear, because hope and fear cannot dwell in the same place. The people who can, if you're questioning what's been going on, is that you turn those questions into, I can't look away anymore, this doesn't make sense. And you overcome your fear and you stand up. Those will be the heroes of this story. Lenin had the same crazy stuff. You guys don't know who, I can't get into Gromsky. Gromsky's the one that came in, and he was an Italian socialist, communist. But he's the one that really changed what Marxism looked like into a cultural Marxism using hegemony, actually putting it into practice. And so really when we talk, people, he's like, everybody's like, oh, Karl Marx. No, we really need to talk about, like, it is still called cultural Marxism, but Gromsky's the one that really hit and got it moving here. But I know this should, if you have children or no education, deconstruct the language of civics, math, science, history, geography. Discover your own truth. Teachers are the guide. I don't know if y'all, the new language people are taking to be like the sage advice is student-led learning. Is like I hear it all the time. Student-led learning. That's literally Paulo Freire, pedagogy of the oppressed. Literally student-led learning. The teacher is just a facilitator. That's what's going on in our schools. Group learning. Anybody here have a child who had in like 3rd grade an entire year of project-based learning? Group think. There's a great article by Stella Morabito. Her family escaped Armenian genocide, called groupthink leads to genocide. That's where they're doing all this group stuff. Required volunteer is the new thing I'm hearing too. Your kid has, no they don't, by the compulsory education of Virginia, no they don't. But what is that all about? Because there's a lot of history on what that really, community service work, what that really is. It's developing the collective in the community. Everything is about power and group identity, shifts away from cognitive learning to transforming kids. And so it's like, we have to start thinking about how many people have been murdered. Because if you weren't aware of the definition, this is the Holocaust Museum's definition of genocide. It's killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. So what does genocide look like now? Dr. Fury and I think for a year now we've been talking about this, it won't ever look the same. It won't look like the Holocaust did. It won't be the killing fields. Because of technology, everything looks different. But it's just because it's not as overt. You have to start questioning, stop. And in education reform, the eugenesis, population control. That would be Julian Huxley, his brother, that great book he wrote. He also founded UNESCO, the UN, way back when, and he was a eugenicist who teamed with behaviorists. And the UN, UNESCO, by the way, that's like the world standards of learning for, comprehensive sex ed, like social emotional learning, all the lunacy. It's not coming from federal education or the state anymore. Everything is getting funneled from the UN, from UNESCO. If you want to find one, you can look up the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of UNESCO. They will literally tell you what they're doing with social emotional learning. They send out great blue dot newsletters because you really want to see a third grader with a chip being inserted into the side of their head wearing VR goggles. Because if you didn't know, our governor did an executive order, which has the force of law, requiring standards of learning for augmented reality, VR, and AI 2 weeks ago. That means the kids are going to be learning on Minecraft in VR goggles in a year or two, because the World Economic Forum was talking about it 7 years ago. And he was on stage there 2019, 2020, or 2020. Behaviorists, by the way, that includes Skinner and Pavlov. And the Skinner box right there, that's outcomes-based education, which then became Common Core, which is now competencies-based education, was actually based on the Skinner box. And Pavlov is one of those behaviorists that had to do with it. And Dr. Fury was talking about crazy bills right now. This is my mom, 23 years old. She was a Richmond Memorial nursing student. She'd been in class all day. She got out of her car. A man robbed her and slit her from ear to ear and left her behind a bush. Because she was a nursing student, she knew how to stick her fingers inside of her neck and get to her sister's door. This man had just been released from prison. He raped and stabbed another woman before they caught him. And I can remember when I was 10 years old, the fear in my grandfather and my mother's face when he got out again. And I say this because Cree Deeds has, I might have deleted it. Oops. Cree Deeds has just introduced a bill. I will look for it right now. I'll tell you what it is. That after 15 years, anyone with any charge or any combination of charges can apply to get out of prison. Any person that's literally, I will read it to you. Any person with any charge or any combination of charges can apply to get out of prison, no matter what their history. So I will be down there with my mother's story This is what these people believe in is like social justice because it's wrong. We're still sending them to prison. Is I would challenge them to sit down and have a conversation if you actually care about the black men who are leaving their families, because there are too many black going to prison. But that's not how you fix the problem, is releasing them back into society. Sit down and figure out what we're doing wrong to fail, and I guarantee you welfare is going to be at the head of that. But they don't want that. They just want to do what they want. They don't actually want to help the people they say that they're helping. But is what I challenge you is to start having the conversations about this bill. I'll pull it up. And because I can promise you that it's not just one angry white daughter that will be down there if we start talking about it, is that there are families, gang victims, rape victims, survivors, that the thought, this is not just like, people are like, oh, of course, this is the way you have something to say. No, I'm not speaking out against black people. I didn't even tell you what color skin he had. Is that the thought? I'm also a survivor of child sex abuse. So the thought of anybody after 15 years, no matter what their charges or history or combination of, can apply to get out of prison. What is the deterrent from coming and shooting up a schoolroom with children? What's the deterrent from breaking the law at all? Murdering people. Well, 15 years, yeah, my wife, she was, hate her, or my husband, yep, 15 years, I can totally do that. But then when the murder rate skyrockets, it's racist, we don't know what's happening here. But it's that things like, the people say the governor has a veto pad. If nobody shows up to show that they care about a bill, I can guarantee you the governor is not going to stick his neck out and veto something if people don't show up that they care. Let's see. No, that's Hashmi. Ugh, I have a whole thing of bills. It was in the House, and Creed Eads, man, he's the one I told last year that he's the reason they need to get term limits. He just, oh my God, the bills he does every year, just get crazier and crazier. Where is it? No, I'll tell you in a minute. But yeah, so that's coming up, and I just wanted to, because I heard Dr. Fury up here talking about crazy legislation, and that was one that I feel like it was super crazy and needed to get a little bit of attention. But yeah, I mean, so it's like in the House, you know, there's all these limitations on painkillers because I lived through the opioid epidemic, but they want to remove anybody with sickle cell, you know, because they get called, or they get everybody. They don't let anybody get past that system. Where it's supposed to be that you only get past the monitoring system if you're in hospice or or you have cancer or you have certain. Now, if you just have sickle cell because it's so painful, you can bypass all of the pain meds, like the system that they use to track that. But they didn't care about the rise in black overdoses. They actually blamed the heroin and fentanyl problem on the fact that they can't get opiates. But I gotta find. You know what? I finally, someone told me one day, this is really sad, that you could type into your phone and words, and that it would help you. And I have 80 billion screenshots. I'm not kidding. It's all in the detail. Okay, SB 427, petition for modification of a sentence. Creeds provides a process for a person serving a sentence for any conviction or a combination of any convictions who remains incarcerated in a state or local correctional facility and meets certain criteria to petition the circuit court the original judgment to suspend the unserved portion, place the person on probation, or otherwise modify the sentence imposed. Now that's just the summary. When you click on the blue and it breaks the whole bill down is when you read the entire bill. If you don't know and if you go up to the top, if you go into this you would hit highlight, it will highlight all the new stuff and redline what they're taking out. And that's how you read legislation, which is really important to know too. And that's at lis.va.gov. Or you can just type in 2024 Virginia legislation, and there's this thing called Lobbyist in a Box, and it's free, and you can choose like 4 things that you really care about: education, early childhood education, guns, and during legislative season, you'll get updates on those things. And if you really are a lobbyist, like you can pay like $1, I don't know, it's like $1 a week, and you can get updates on pretty much all of them. Because it's like whack-a-mole trying to keep up with where they are. I was in stilettos down there like last week. Like, it was, they don't want you to be there. It's a nightmare. But like I said, it's always a pleasure to come up here, and wish we hadn't wasted time. But next time we will get into how the behaviorists and the eugenicists, because guys, I hate to tell you, but Hitler got his ideas from the eugenicists here in the United States. Some of the ones that we just touched on there. But genocide is going to look very different. So whether it's the vaccine and those deaths, or the deaths from the children, being told that they can take, anything, Canada, by the way, we're 2 years behind Canada, and Canada is giving fentanyl to children. I was watching Jordan Peterson and Tucker Carlson the other night, because Jordan Peterson lost his court case, and so he's going to lose his license because he won't go to re-education camp. And I don't know if you pay attention. We're 2 years, that's the estimated, we're 2 years behind Canada. So I would say in 2 years, I don't know if we'll be giving kids fentanyl, but we will definitely be giving them safe needles in clinics, is where we will be at a minimum, because it's the right thing to do to keep them from ODing or... So that's how bad it is. And like I said, I'm always available if anybody wants to reach out, email Dana. I give you carte blanche to... But if you don't send me any stalkers. I have a Yunkin drone that flies over my head all the time. I'm used to it, so. But thank you guys. And I know the truth is like in your face, because it was a hard red pill for me to swallow 2 years ago, and I had to sit down and actually look at what I had been bobbleheading for way too long. And then once you see it, I just ask that you don't unsee it. You can't look away. You don't have to be a me. Just do something. Have the conversation with somebody. And it's like Dana always says is, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to open your eyes. And you can is that Google. I have never filed a FOIA in my life. Is that it's all out there. I promise you. Like, it's not even really that hard to find. And you can see original first documents straight from the federal education from Russia, with Reagan on education. I mean, it's all out there, and it's sucks. But not only our children, but our nation are teetering. Because yes.
So, especially since the Democrats pretty much rule our government right now, we can write. I've written to Tim Kaine before. I've written to all the other Democrats that represent us, and basically they just send back a letter letting us know their agenda. Like, they don't even listen to what we.
No.
So how do we stop it? Because they're not, even if we get it done, they're not gonna care.
Well, I've called Elizabeth Warren's office before, because on this data collection on children, her and Markey really hate it because it targets transgender children. I don't care why you hate it. Just glad you hate it, because our two don't even hate it. Like, they don't even care that it targets black or historically marginalized or transgender children. They don't even care about that. I would say find a more moderate Democrat, but these primaries the needle moved to the left on both sides. Is first understanding the Constitution, because I talk to people like all day long about, and once we all start talking about it like it's not a mythical unicorn, and knowing that like, for me, I tell people all the time, is school, like, is this how the freest nation in the world treats parents? That you're legally required to send your children to school, but you have no say in what happens there? Because it doesn't make sense, so I'm gonna go find out why. And the great thing is that I had to find all those breadcrumbs and do it myself, but is that always use your voice. use that list. Write your legislators, write your local officials, because so we know that the law of the land is law. It's called the Virginia Code for a reason, is because the state codes, mandates, policies, and all that stuff are meant for like governmental structure. The law of man is the Constitution of the United States. It is the Supreme Court. So the Virginia Code can never, no law or code can ever violate, and is that knowing your rights, and I would say right now is getting anybody to listen. It's hard. And so that's when the avenue you probably want to start taking is figuring out, because the founding fathers would not have set up this amazing form of government if there weren't safeguards. Is because in school I can tell you there's like 15 things that you could do. And then just start talking to other people, because somebody knows somebody that, and start talking about. And a lot of time, once you start talking about it, if it's not that big of a swamp issue or cabal, if you get enough people talking about it, and this, when I say enough, it's like 4, because I'm in a division of 64,000 children, and if it's more than 1 or 2, we can usually get something done. But start figuring out, like, is this legal? Is this Constitution? And because we have to start figuring out ways, because we don't have an ACLU who will swing their bat, and the governor and his little backside goes "Whoop," when they tell him what to do, because that's how this transgender policy came about, because the original one was not like this. And then Equality Virginia and the ACLU had the JCAR hearing with Creed Deeds, and then that's how this one came up. And that's where conspiracy against rights, which would be Civil Rights 1964, Section 1985 comes in, which is what I'm putting together now. Is that, so like, the Supreme Court is there for a reason. And so the fact that we've had an entire state of parents, like, precedent is set because people cared enough to sue in 1925, and then take it all the way. That would be Pierce v. Sisters, like homeschooling, that, all that stuff. People cared enough back then, like, how have we, because I can guarantee you nobody in the government's going to save us anytime soon. So, and unfortunately, at the local level, president is what's going to trickle down from that. I mean, we might have safer borders and we might have a little less corruption, but what's been done to this nation, one election isn't going to fix if we don't know how to stand up as we the people. Because it will be him, the governor, and them, the Senate, and not we the people, if we don't start exercising our rights and what God gave us to begin with. So.